I have been keeping my eye on a very troubling trend these past few years of the high rise, or the meteoric rise, shall I say, of depression among high school students. And of course, high school age, teenagers, is always an age where there's a lot of difficulty to begin with. It's a very delicate and difficult time for most people. But the rate of depression is rising dramatically in this past decade alone. In the year 2012, there's a survey that goes out every few years or so, asking young people about how they feel on things and asking true or false on these questions. Do you agree with this, yes or no? And the question, I can't do anything right, and I don't like my life. Would you agree with that? In 2012, the answer was about 20% of teenagers said that. Today, in 2023, it's now almost 50%. It's a meteoric rise of young people who, nearly half of our young people say, I can't do anything right and I don't like my life. And that's a troubling statistic. And it's even made worse and more sobering when we look at the fact that in this past decade, hospitalizations due to self-inflicted wounds on teenagers has risen 163%. And it's staggering and sobering, and wondering, we have to ask, obviously, what's going on among our young people? And when you chart it and look at the timing of it, it seems to coincide perfectly with the rise of the social media, most especially the apps Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, that since those times that they started in 2012, more or less. And from that point on, if you look on the graph, you see how it just takes off from that. And so it brings to question the seriousness of the effect of social media upon our young people. And now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not for a moment saying that social media is evil and it has to all be shut down. Of course not. There were very good, positive things that can be done with it. But anybody knows and can see that it's consuming our young people, and we have to have limits on it and guides one way or another to know how to use it. Discussion of what's causing it all, of course, is beyond our scope here this evening, and the proper way to control social media and kids' use of it, of course, is not something we can discuss tonight. But certainly, some of the things that do coincide with that I think anybody would understand, some of the reasons why they say social media is affecting our young people so much. Number one, that kids are spending more and more time just texting and on apps such as that, rather than having personal conversations with people where they have the human element of the human being involved. And that, they say, of course, affects their social skills and everything else, as we can imagine with that. And secondly, far more serious, is the fact that in social media these days, people can be absolutely cruel in the things that they write on blogs. I've seen it on my own blog, and anybody who runs a blog and has anybody respond will say the same thing, that it seems like almost nobody knows how to respectfully disagree anymore. If they disagree with you, they just throw all sorts of mud at you, call you every name under the book. Really nasty conversation, just because we have a difference of agreement on a topic. And for anyone, that can be difficult, especially on a teenager. And you think about it, if somebody is really angry with someone and were to go and speak to them face to face, they might be angry enough to spew all their venom at the person. But when we're seeing another human being, usually there's something within us that would help us pull it back a little bit, especially if we watch the other person recoil to what we're saying, and maybe there's a touch of something within us that makes us feel a little compassion for the person. We may pull back and soften it. But when people are just writing something, typing it on a screen, and then pressing enter, and they don't see anything of the results of what the person on the other side is receiving, how painful and destructive it can be. And it seems some people almost relish in it. Already, just since yesterday, how many things on the different websites already have been reported about nasty comments that people have left about the 5 people who tragically died in that submarine, the submersible, going down to see the remains of the Titanic. And people with just nasty comments about why those people would do something like that in the first place. They deserve it, blah, 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 all that. Horrible. Horrible. Why are people so nasty these days? And it's a problem, of course, that we're seeing all over the place. And when it hits teenagers, it's even worse because they're at an age where fitting in and acceptance by their peers is even more important to them. And yet, while a person could come up to them after something at a sports team or something and say, hey, good job, that was a great kick you had or hit, whatever it may be, when it comes to other things, it seems that a lot of young people today, I think, are placing their value on how many hits and how many likes they get on something they post on any given app. And so everything, their value is being determined by what other people put. And of course, for everyone who puts something positive, there are so many others who put something negative out there. And it's very much a concern that we need to have for our young people. What can we do for them? Well, of course, yeah, it's a complex situation, and not only the social media, there are many other things that go along with it. But we need to give them something that will help them defend themselves against such moments such as that. Bullying and being unkind to others has always been part of teenagers. Yeah, it's a regular part of life. When I was a teenager, I went to a Catholic all-boys school, got an excellent education there. I'm very proud of the education I got. But like anywhere, there were some bullies in our school, and especially the ones who were larger in size used to love to pick on those of us who were a little bit smaller in stature. And so we endured a lot. And I remember what I did. When I would go into school, thankfully, because it was a Catholic school, I would go into the chapel before classes began, and I would just say a prayer. Lord, I would pray for them. Probably selfishly, Lord, just keep them off my back today. Let them leave me alone. But I would also say, but if they do give me trouble, help me to respond in an appropriate way that's not going to get me into more trouble later or something that's only going to make things worse. But that prayer, and knowing that the Lord was with me each and every day, that gave me the strength I needed to get through what I had to those days. And now I cringe at the thought of if we had social media back then and people could, just post things about me on all these different sites, I absolutely wonder how I would have gotten through those days. And so I feel very concerned about our young people who are facing that. Now, we could look at the statistics and say, well, 50% of the kids think they can't do anything right, but that means the other 50% think they're fine. Well, I don't know if it's quite that easy. But we certainly know all of us need strength and advice and help to try to hold our heads up and feel our own dignity, our own self-respect in the midst of a world that puts us down so much, most especially our young people. And I think the key to that is remembering the Lord's love for us. We hear Jesus saying in the gospel reading today, every hair of your head has been counted. Now, unless you are absolutely, totally, and completely bald and maybe have only one hair on your head, most people who have any bit of hair on their head, even the most vain people in the world, have never counted every single hair on their head to know exactly what they have. But God has. He knows the number of every hair on our head. He knows us better than we know ourselves. And that means that God loves us even more than we love ourselves. Perhaps we even see that when we go to confession and bring before the Lord sins that we confess over and over again. And we say, God should be frustrated with me by now and say, when are you going to stop? Just bite the bullet and stop and cut it out. I've given you enough chances. But he never does. He forgives us over and over again. And we might even want to say to God, why do you keep forgiving me? And his answer is, because I love you. And I still believe in you, and I'm not giving up on you. In other words, God continues to love us even when we've stopped loving ourselves. And I'm convinced if we give our children a faithful relationship with Christ, that will give them the strength to get through anything that comes our way, and will stay with them through the rest of their lives, and those of us who are now adults, in anything that happens our way. The presence of Christ at our side. That's what we need, to remember how much he loves us. The world has gotten rid of God, and that's why we're in so much trouble. The further away from God we get, the worse it gets. And we need to put him back in. I remember some years ago, I was giving a teen retreat. I was the priest on the weekend, and a young man came in to talk with me and told me a story that broke my heart. He was 16 years old, and he sat down and told me that his mother once said he was an accident, that she was not supposed to be able to conceive when he came along. Now, some people might have seen a very positive spin on that and said, look, you are a miracle from God. God wanted me to have you at this moment. But not this mother. The boy says, and at no time in my life have my parents ever made me feel like I was anything other than an accident or a mistake to them. Broke my heart to hear a 16-year-old boy say that. And he was a good-looking kid. Somebody looked like he had a lot of talents and skills. Now, I never met his parents. I hope very much they loved him, and that maybe it was the old communication gap thing going on, that the way they were showing their love was not the way he was perceiving it. But I remember I said to him, all right, even if what you tell me is absolutely true, that your parents never wanted you, they only see you as an accident or even as a mistake, you are not a mistake to God, and you are not an accident to him. Each and every one of us who is here now on this earth is here at this moment in time because God has willed us into existence. And we are here because he wants us here. Even if the child came into the world outside of the conventional way that God has ordained people through a proper marriage, even those individuals are willed into existence by God and have a reason to be on the face of the earth. And I told him, you are no different from anyone else. And I said to him, I said, you know how they say no two snowflakes are the same? Well, neither are two people the same. There have never been two people who are exactly alike. Even identical twins, if you know some. I've worked with many sets of identical twins over the years, and one pair in particular I remember from one parish, you could not tell these two boys apart. There was only one way actually they could do it. Matthew had a birthmark on his cheek, a little mole there, a beauty mark I should say. And so whenever the boys would come up, I'd look for the beauty mark. And if I saw the mark, I'd say, Mark, Matthew, good. If I didn't see it there, I'd say, hello, Chris. But their personalities were very different. The mother would tell me how very different these boys were at home. So even though they looked exactly alike, they were not exactly alike. And I told this young man, you may grow up and have children, and they may look like you, they may act like you, for better or for worse. They may get the good or the bad from you, but they won't be you. They will be molded and shaped by the times and circumstances in which they grow up. I said, so you are the only person just like yourself that God has ever created. A unique individual, a unique gift from God. And each and every one of us is made in the image and likeness of God. That means God is showing himself to the world through you in a way he has never done before and never will do again. And I told him, I said, you are a unique manifestation of the face of Christ. And if you can be yourself with your personality, with whatever particular talents that God has given you, and nobody has all talents, but everybody has something. If you can be yourself, but be your best self, then we will see God in you. We will come to know and love God by the unique gift that he has given the world in creating you. And in your doing that, you will find great a sense of worth in your own life. You'll find your identity, you'll find your dignity, and you won't have to run off into so many of the other crazy things that so many young people go to, just trying to find some way to make themselves stand out and be different. Just knowing I am a unique creation by God is all I need to know that I am loved and I have a reason for being on the face of the earth. And my brothers and sisters, all of us can learn from that, how much tremendous love Jesus has for each and every one of us. Even just to remember that if you and I were the only person he had ever created and we had sinned, which of course we all have, he would have died on the cross just for my sins, just for your sins. That's how much he loves each and every one of us. And so, my friends, I think it is so important that we do everything we can, use all of our power to get God back into the world. The world keeps trying to knock him out, to eliminate him, and it's only getting worse. God is the antidote. God is the solution. Put Christ back in the world, especially into the hearts of our young people. Encourage everyone you know to bring your children to worship, to pray with them, to get to know the Lord, because that dignity that they will find will give them strength to deal with whatever comes along their way. No matter how cruel somebody will be to them, God will be there by their side. And that's going to give them a lot more strength than a whole shelf full of trophies that they won, but at the expense of going to church on Sunday because they were too busy playing sports. As beautiful as those are, the most important thing we give our children is a faithful relationship with Christ. Encourage your family, your neighbors, your friends to bring your children to know Christ and pray to him yourself. asking him to help you realize the beautiful and unique gift that you are a unique manifestation of the face of Christ in the world. And if you are yourself, but your best self, you will always feel good about yourself. You will be bringing God to the world in a way only you can do. And you will never feel like your life has no meaning, that you can't do anything right, but you will feel each and every day, my life is important. I am here for a good and holy purpose. I am here to bring Christ to the world in my unique way. And you will rejoice through every difficulty and celebrate every success because they are experienced in Christ, who has given you the very meaning for your existence. May Jesus Christ be praised, now and forever.